how to come up with book ideas and how to make those ideas better and how to use those ideas to finish your books. This is going to be so much fun. I love these trainings. It's such a great way to connect with writers all over the world. So let's go ahead and check in while you're logging on, while you're kind of getting accustomed to the layout. In the chat, check in and let me know where you're coming from. It's always fun to see where everyone's coming from. While you're doing that, by the way, there's a little drop down in the chat. Right now it says host and panelists. Just change that to everyone so that everyone can see where you're coming from. Great to see all of you starting to check in there in the chat. Also, yeah, I was going to remind you to switch the tab, but I already did that. If we haven't met, my name's Joe Bunting. I'm a Wall Street Journal best-selling ghostwriter. My memoir, Crowdsourcing Paris, came out at the end of last year, and I'm also the founder of The Right Practice. So thanks so much for being here. This is really going to be a great time. I'm excited to hear all about your book ideas and really talk about how professional authors come up with book ideas and how they take those ideas and turn them into finished books. Okay? Because it's not enough to have an idea, right? You also have to write your book. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And before we get started, I just want to acknowledge that 2021 has been kind of a tough year for writing. We thought 2020 was hard, and then 2021 happened. And I talked to so many writers, even professional writers, who are really struggling right now, who are finding it really hard to focus, who are dealing with burnout. So if that's happening to you, I just want to say, first of all, you're not alone. And the good news is that right now, even right now, you can choose to finish your book. You have the opportunity to choose to finish your book. Or if you've already finished a book before, you have a chance to choose to finish your next book. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and check in the chat and see where everyone's coming from. Hey, Shelly from California. Great to see you, Shelly. Always fun to see you. Priya from India. Ruti is here from Israel. Tom from UK, Travis from Texas, love the alliteration, Travis, that's awesome. Carmen from the US, Haley from Japan, very cool. Bola is here from Southern California. Kimberly from Colorado, ooh, another literary name. Kasturi from California, another one, I love it. Andela from Serbia. Basically, if you have alliteration in your name and where you're coming from, I'm going to talk about it because I think it's so great. Serena from Canada, Lisa from Ottawa, Christine from Rhode Island, I from the Bahamas, I think, Linda from the UK, Nikita from Israel, Terrence from Tennessee, very cool, Sophia from North Carolina, Nakshatra from Brazil, Sadia from Toronto, Pavan from Ireland, Eric from California, Crispin is here from Los Angeles, Judy from Ohio, Ruland is here from New Zealand, Mark from Jersey City. What time is it in New Zealand right now? Goodness, it's got to be really early in the morning, right? Shirley in SoCal, a lot of SoCal people. Antonio from Utah, Janet from Indiana, Neve from the UK, Nick from Germany, Robert from Florida. Did we see you earlier this week? I feel like that sounds familiar. Hey, Paige from Atlanta, great to see you. I guess you're not in Atlanta, you're in Mississippi. Vermont Avenue, I don't know exactly where that is. Is that southeast side? So maybe where I used to live in EAV. I don't know. Let me know what neighborhood he lives. Kevin from South Carolina. Zalika from Namibia. Ital is here from Nigeria. That might be the name of your phone. I'm not sure. Victoria from Nigeria. Andrea from New York. Kelly from Texas. Linda from the UK. There's a lot of people. I'm not sure if I'm going to get through all these. Samuel is here from Ghana. Judith from California. David from Ohio, Vanessa from Ghana, Cami from Argentina, Sherry from Ohio, Chris from Japan. A couple of Japan people, that's cool. Kaniska from Sri Lanka, Kathy from New Mexico, Linda from Connecticut, Barbara from Oregon, Colleen from Massachusetts, I'm almost there. Rulan from New Zealand, oh, it's 7:05. That's not too bad. I was thinking it was much earlier. Huhaida from Brunei, very cool. And 2 a.m. there, oh my goodness. Bless your heart, wow. Kanishka from Sri Lanka. Welcome, everyone. So great to see you. I'm going to take a quick break to blow my nose because you don't want to hear that. I'm going to put myself on mute. One sec. excuse me, I've been doing these trainings all week, and I'm just, it's fun to do a training when you're coughing and having a cold. But we're making it. And Aya from Michigan, welcome here, everyone. So great to see you. This is going to be so much fun. Today, I really want to give you my best training. Over the last 10 years, I've written 15 books, and some of those books have done really well. Some of them have hit bestseller lists, and some of them have been complete flops. And in that time, I've spent a lot of time thinking about what makes great book ideas and what doesn't. And now I do book consulting for other authors. Some of my clients pay me tens of thousands of dollars for exactly what we're going to be talking about today. But for you guys, I just want to share as much as I can about the ideation process, how you come up with publishable book ideas, how to figure out if those ideas are good or not, which isn't very easy, right? And how you turn those ideas into finished novels and memoirs and nonfiction books. And then at the end, we'll have a lot of time to take your book writing questions, which should be really fun. So if you've never been to something like this, this is how it's going to work. We're going to start with the teaching. That's going to last 50 minutes or so. And then at the end of the teaching, I'm going to give you an exclusive opportunity to join a program that no one else is getting. And then we'll have our time of Q&A where we'll hear from you and get all of your book writing questions. And then at the very, very end, we're going to have a prize. So everyone who's able to stick around to the end is going to get a prize, a really helpful tool you can't get anywhere else. So if you're able to stick around, make sure to do that so you can get your prize. And Haley, oh my goodness, 3 a.m.? That's crazy. Well, thank you for being here and sacrificing your sleep to be on this training. Let's go ahead and switch over to the slides. Hopefully you can see those. Let me know in the chat if those are showing up correctly for you. It should say Better Book Ideas. Is that working okay? Great, thank you. All right, so this is called Better Book Ideas, also known as how I went from an aspiring author with thousands of book ideas and 0 finished books to a best-selling author of 15 books. And I want to share the process that I use, but also that really thousands of other writers in our community have used to get book ideas and write great books. And again, if we haven't met, my name's Joe Bunting. Like I said, I'm the founder of The Right Practice. Books I have written have appeared on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, the USA Today bestseller list, and have been #1 bestsellers on Amazon. I'm also a dad, so here's a picture of my family. There's my wife Talia, my daughter Shoshana, my son Marston, my son Remy. There they all are. For some reason, 2 of them are not smiling, of course, because you take 1,000 pictures, it would be way too much to ask for all of them to be smiling at the same time. But it's always like 1 or 2 that are never smiling. What is that? Anyway, that's me. Now I would love to know why you're here. And I'm going to send a poll your way if you would let me know in that poll which one sounds most like you. All right, are you here because you have a book idea already and you love it? Are you here because you have an idea but you're not sure about it? Are you here because you have 1,000 ideas but you're not sure which one to write? Or are you here because you don't have an idea yet? Let me know in that poll which one sounds most like you. And while you're doing that, I just want to say again, welcome. I saw a couple people are just joining us now, which is awesome. So glad you're here. You're in the right spot. And I also want to remind you that we have a free prize at the end of the training. So if you're able to stick all the way to the end, you'll get a free prize, which is pretty cool. So make sure to stay to the end of that. If you have a question at any point, you can put it in the Q&A box, okay? Usually the Q&A box is right next to the chat. It's in like the top left of your screen or the bottom of your screen. But put your questions there because they will get lost in the chat. If you put them in the chat, that's fine. I might see them, I might not. But put them in the Q&A as well, so that I can definitely answer them at the end. Man, this cough is killing me right now. All right, let's check in and see why people are here. I'm going to share those poll results with you. All right, so it looks like 34% of people are here because they already have an idea and they love it. That's awesome. 43% have an idea but are not quite sure about it. Totally get that. 13%, 9 of you, have 1,000 ideas, but you're not sure which one to write. And then 7 people, 10% of you, don't have an idea yet. So for that 10%, if you don't have an idea yet, that's totally great. You're in the right spot. I think by the end you will have some ideas occur to you. Okay? And if you don't, let me know at the end of the training in the Q&A, and I will make sure that you come away with an idea. Okay? And for the rest of you, I think that's so interesting. I think it's so true that as writers, we do have ideas, right? Sometimes we are confident about them. Sometimes we're not confident about them. But most of us do have ideas. And our challenge is really to develop them. Because an idea alone isn't enough, right? An idea alone, no matter how good it is, isn't going to result in a published book. It won't even result in the first chapter. You also have to develop that idea. You also have to write your book. And that's why I'm here. So I'd love to briefly tell you the story about how I became a best-selling author. And I actually became a writer in part because of my dad. So when I was about 9 years old, my dad got really sick. He had a disease called chronic fatigue syndrome. And basically all he could do for about 5 years was look out the window. And it was a really hard time in his life, of course, in my life too, and in our family's life. But one of the only things that he could do during that time was write. Just the way his brain was working, he couldn't do much, but he could write. And every day I would watch him drag himself to the keyboard and sit down for an hour or two and just write. And then when he couldn't write anymore, he would collapse into his bed for the rest of the day. But after a while of doing this, he ended up writing a novel that was over 600 pages long. And for me, that was so inspiring because I realized that to be a writer, all you have to do is grind through it, to drag yourself to your computer and put in your daily writing and then crash. It was hard, definitely, but it wasn't complicated. And then a few years later, I was reading a book when I first had this thought that maybe I could do this. Maybe I could make this my job, to create these books, these amazing things that transport you to another world and give you so many incredible experiences. If you're here, you've probably had a similar thought, that maybe I could do this, that maybe I could be a professional writer. That would be a pretty cool job, right? And I was about 15 or 16 years old when I thought that. And of course, I had no idea what being a writer actually meant, but it sounded really fun. So I went to college and I decided I was going to be an English major. I was going to study creative writing, and I went to this private college in California. There it is. It's this really beautiful campus. And I majored in creative writing, hoping that a degree would actually make me an author. And it didn't work. I didn't actually do that much writing. I studied a lot of books and I wrote some short stories, but it didn't actually help me become an author. And for me, that was the beginning of this long, almost decade-long journey to figure out how to actually become an author. And that led to working at a local newspaper where I wrote news articles and music reviews. I eventually quit my job to travel the world and focus on my writing. And then after I got back, I was lucky enough to get a job ghostwriting a book for a friend, eventually becoming something of a hired gun, helping other authors write and publish their books. And I have no idea why I'm wearing a green wig in that picture. You can kind of see the cafe where I wrote my first book. I actually wrote it on that couch. And this is the only picture I have of that place that was very meaningful to me. And I have green hair. So you're welcome for that image. So there you go. And that journey even led me to starting the Write Practice in 2011, because I knew that one of the best ways to learn was to teach. And so I wanted to do more of that. This is what the Write Practice looked like back in 2011. I actually made that logo on Microsoft Paint, which is, I was pretty proud of myself. It's also horribly ugly, but there you go. So then I finally did it. My book, Crowdsourcing Paris, finally came out, a memoir, which was a bunch of challenges and adventures that I accomplished in Paris with my wife and 10-month-old son. It was finally published, and it was a dream come true. As soon as it came out, it was the #1 new release on Amazon. One reviewer said, it will almost definitely be the book I most recommend from this year. And it also took me 5 years to write, from first idea to finished book. It took me 5 years to write. It was this huge, hard struggle. And that was even though, by that point, I had already written 4 other books. So I knew how to do it. I knew how to write a book, but I still struggled so much. My goal for this time is both to help you figure out how to come up with great book ideas, but also to figure out how to finish those ideas. Because the best book idea unwritten is just another unfinished book. And I don't want that to happen to you. Now, sometimes when I tell people that story, I hear something like, "That's great for you, Joe. I'm happy that you did that. But is it really reasonable to think that everyone can do that?" And what they're really saying is, can I do that? Or maybe they're thinking, there's no way I could possibly do that. Maybe you're feeling like that right now. And the answer is yes, you can. So here are just a few people who have taken their book ideas and turned them into amazing books. So this is Jamie Biggs. Jamie wrote her first book in our course. Since then, it's gotten over 1.2 million page reads. That's just actually in 1 year, which is incredible. She's done so well. This is Mary Goodman. Mary published her first book after taking our course. Since then, she's written 17 books, which is incredible. And I think it's even more than that, because I haven't checked in with them for a while. This is Jake A. Strife. Jake is a Wattpad famous author. He has over 1 million reads on Wattpad, but on his 23rd book, he was actually very stuck. And he was trying to get out of it. He signed up for a course. He finished his 23rd book in just 4 months, and the feedback he's gotten has been so good on that book. The reality is that you can do it too. You can take your idea and turn it into a finished book. But the question is, are you up for the challenge, right? Because what I tell my writing students is that writing a book is hard. It might be one of the hardest things you ever do in your life. But it's also the good kind of hard. It's the climbing Mount Everest kind of hard. It's the walking the Pacific Crest Trail kind of hard. It's the eating a really ginormous hamburger kind of hard. Now, personally, I've never actually eaten a hamburger that big. I think I would explode. I would literally die if I ate that hamburger. But you know what I'm saying. Writing a book is a challenge. It might be one of the hardest things you ever do in your life, but when you finish, you'll know it was worth every moment. So I want to hear from you. If you're up for this challenge, I want you to go ahead and type into the chat, "I'm in," because I want you to publicly declare that you're going to take on this challenge with all the tenacity and intelligence and grit that you have. I'm already seeing a couple of "I'm ins." Ella is in, Mayowa is in, Linda's in, Kevin is in, Mark in, love it, Saul is in, Colleen is in, Nakshatra is in, Serena is in, Parthana is in, I'm sorry for mispronouncing these, Ruchi is in, Andrea, Bola, Michael is in, says yep, Antonio is in, Stacy's in, so many people are in, Kasturi is totally in, I love it. Yes, I'm in, Neve said, Kelly's all in, very cool. Alright, I'm seeing so many ins. I am still in, that's great, Charles. Did this yesterday and received a lot of support. Now I have to finish, love that, John. Alright, Terrence is in, Crispin's in, Param's in, very cool. So, here's what I want you to do next. I know that you just posted publicly in this chat to a bunch of strangers, but I want you to take this to the next level, okay? I want you to go on your favorite social media site. If you're not on social media, I want you to open up your email and literally, go there right now, okay? Open up a new browser, go to Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever. If you're not on social media, go to your email, open up a new email, okay? And I want you to take a stand, all right? Now that you've said that you're in, I want you to take a stand. Here's something that I wrote last year. By the end of September, I'm going to finish the second draft of my novel, which I'm in the middle of right now. It feels both terrifying and so exciting. I want you to do this, okay? I want you to take a public stand and tell everyone that you know that you're going to finish your book, okay? Can you do that? And ideally, you would put a deadline on it, whether it's the end of September, whether it's of next year, whether it's the end of 2022, whatever deadline feels good for you, but I want you to say that you're going to finish your book. Can you do that? Okay, I know this is kind of scary, but here's why this is so important. When you take a public stand like this, it actually changes your brain. It makes you more likely to actually follow through and do it. So who's up for this? Who's actually going to do this, to post publicly that they're going to finish their books? Let me know in the chat if you're going to do this. Seriously, this will help you. I think this is so important. And again, it can be on social media, it can be to email, whatever works for you. Ruti Dunskies, already done it. I love it. My entire family knows, but I don't have a social media presence. That's awesome. Tom is already done. I love that. I'll post this here. First draft in 1 month. Oh man, that's serious. I love it. I will do this, Joe, by the end of 2022 with the right practice beside me. I love it, Shelly. I'm so excited for you. Bola tweeted. I said no social media. Do it on email. Everyone has email, right? Saul says, isn't it a bit pretentious? It is a little bit pretentious, but do you want to finish your book? You want people to hold you accountable. You want yourself to hold you accountable. And when you post publicly, you're on the hook. You have to do it. All right? If you want to ask, if you want to make it a little less pretentious, say that, can you help me? Can you hold me accountable to it? That will feel a little bit less pretentious. But I think it's so important. Ruan's already done it. Zolika's posted on email. Have to finish writing my opera first. You could do the same thing with your opera. Post and tell people that you're going to do it. Ruti, book 4 is in the works. Looking forward to finishing it by the end of the year. Yes, I love it. Saul just wanted to hear what I would say. Well, there you go. All right, a bunch of people have done it. Love it. Send out a text. I think that's so great to the people who are important to me. Very cool. I'm glad you do that. By the way, if you post with the hashtag The Right Practice, we'll see it, we'll like it, and share it. All right? Email my family. That's so cool. I think this is so helpful. All right. So in this training, I want to talk especially about the difference between 2 types of people, okay? Aspiring writers and published authors. And personally, I've been both. I've been the writer who is just staring at the blank page, who's looking for that perfect idea that would help me go from someone who wanted to be a writer, who actually studied writing in college but couldn't get it together and finish a book, to a published author who was read by millions of people. And I remember so many times of just staring at the blank page, feeling so discouraged and so frustrated, like maybe I was never going to actually make it. Have you ever felt like that before? Like you're never actually going to make it. Like you could just stare at the blank page for forever and you still won't do it. Maybe you felt like that before. And for me, it took me 10 years. It took me a decade to figure it out. A decade of staring at blank pages. And kind of through luck and kind of through tenacity, I stumbled onto this process that really works. All right? So today, I want to share with you 5 secrets that published authors know that aspiring writers don't. Okay? Sound good? Should we get into the first one? All right, let's do it. Quick cough break. Excuse me. All right, let's get into the first one. The first secret that published authors know that aspiring writers don't is that published authors have simple ideas. Published authors have simple ideas. Before I became a published author, I had all of these very elaborate, very extreme ideas. These ideas I thought were going to make me, the great American novelist. And they had 6 different plots, and so much was going on in these stories. They were going to be amazing. But when I became a published author, what I realized is that the best ideas are really simple. And the way I learned that was how to craft my idea into a single sentence premise. And this premise actually forces you to simplify your idea. All right? So let's talk about what a premise is, because I think it's one of the most important things that you can do to start working on your book. Okay? So a premise is actually the most important part of a book proposal. If you want to get traditionally published, a good premise can actually get you published. It's the most important part of a book proposal and a query letter. A premise is like your elevator pitch. I don't know about you, but people are always asking me, oh, you're writing a book, what's it about? And your premise is your elevator pitch. A good premise is going to both instantly capture someone's attention and give them a crystal clear picture of what your book is about. So how do you actually write a premise? We'll talk about how to write a premise for fiction, nonfiction, and memoir. And we'll start with fiction. And I want to share this example with you. Okay? So let me know in the chat if you know what this story comes from. A young girl is swept away to a magical land in a tornado and embarks on a quest to see the wizard who can help her return home. Kevin, that was way too fast. Very good. Nakshatra, Wizard of Oz, yep. Stacy, yep. Well done, everyone. Yes, the Wizard of Oz, we are not in Kansas anymore. So true. So here's what you want to do. You want to take your book idea and synthesize it down to a single sentence summary of your book, okay? And for fiction writers, you want to use the following formula: a character, a goal, and a situation, all right? Character, a goal, and a situation. If you're writing fiction, write this down because this will be so helpful for you, okay? Character, goal, situation. Let's look at our example and break this down. So you have a character, a young girl. Young girl. Usually, by the way, when you're describing your character and premise, you want to use two words, okay? An adjective and a noun, just to keep it super simple. So a young girl. And then you have a goal, some kind of goal. What's her goal? She has to see the wizard who's going to help her return home. She wants to go home, right? So that's her goal. And then finally you have a situation, crisis, an antagonist. What is her situation? She's swept away to a magical land in a tornado and has to go on a quest. All right? So that's her situation. Again, for the fiction writers here, character, goal, situation. All in one sentence. Okay? This is going to help you simplify your idea. All right, Zalik is asking a good question, which I'm about to answer. What if you're writing a real-life story? All right? What if you're writing a memoir? Okay? And again, for memoir, you want to synthesize your story down to a single sentence summary. So your whole story down to one sentence. And you want to focus especially on the problem that you are facing in your life and how you solve that problem. Okay? So you have, for memoir writers, same thing, three things. You have a character, that's you. Okay? A problem or a situation, and a lesson. Those three things. All right, let's look at an example. This is from Crowdsourcing Paris, my memoir. When a cautious writer is forced by his audience to do uncomfortable adventures in Paris, he learns the best stories come when you get out of your comfort zone. Okay, so let's break this down. We have a character, in this case, a cautious writer. And for memoir writers, same thing. You still want to use two words, okay? A problem or situation. What's his problem? He has to do uncomfortable adventures in Paris. Sounds really hard for him, right? Actually was kind of hard, but kind of fun too, obviously. And a lesson. What's his lesson? He learns the best stories come when you get out of your comfort zone. Okay? So those three things if you're working on memoir. Now for nonfiction, for those who are working on nonfiction, you want to focus especially on the problem. The problem is the most important. And the problem might be what you are experiencing, what your audience is experiencing, what kind of problem are people facing. And then you have a person. That person might be you, it might be your readers, it might be some kind of group. And finally, a solution. A solution, your unique solution to that problem. Okay? Those three things in one sentence if you're writing nonfiction. The point of all of this, though, is that summarizing your idea in just one sentence forces you to make your book idea simple. And that's what published authors know. Aspiring writers, they have these really complicated, really ambitious story ideas, ideas that are going to change literature for all time, but their ambition actually ruins their plans because they don't yet have the skills they need to actually finish those ideas. Published authors keep things simple. They have simple ideas. But they do a great job executing those simple ideas by writing great books. Okay, so keep your idea simple, write a premise that will help you so much. All right, let's get into the second secret that published authors know that aspiring writers don't. And that's that published authors know how to study books. Published authors study books. They don't just read books, they study them looking for patterns. All right, so let me give you an example. A couple of years ago, I was editing a book, and this question popped into my head. How do you sell 100 million copies of a book? How do you write a book that's just kind of beyond popular, right? And I researched this question, and I found out that there are actually only 9 books that have sold more than 100 million copies. And so I looked at those 9 books. Fortunately, I had read several of them, and I started looking for patterns. And I realized that their popularity had nothing to do with marketing. Some of them were written hundreds of years ago, before book marketing was a thing. It had nothing to do with marketing. It had to do with having an amazing idea. And the only thing that all 9 of those books had in common was that they were all set in 2 worlds. 2 worlds. There was a normal world and a fantastic world. There was a comfortable world and a challenging world. There was a real world and a fantasy world. Okay, so an example of this was A Tale of Two Cities, which is the book by Charles Dickens. It's on the list. It takes place in London and Paris during the French Revolution. One was really stable, one was really chaotic, right? 2 worlds. Another example was The Little Prince. Okay? The most obvious example, though, is Alice in Wonderland. You've probably heard of this book. It's number 9 on the list. It was also turned into a couple of films. And this really tipped me off to this idea because Lewis Carroll really invented a whole vocabulary to talk about 2 different worlds. Going down the rabbit hole has really become a cliche for entering a second world, but it all started with Lewis Carroll. I'm looking in the chat. You are asking some great questions. Put those in the Q&A box and we'll make sure to answer them at the end. And someone else had a good question earlier that I didn't get a chance to answer. But just make sure your questions are in the Q&A box so that we can answer them there as well. All right? All right. So if you're writing a novel, if you're writing a film, have 2 different worlds. Any kind of story. It will be such a cool thing for you, and it always works. All right, so what about nonfiction? How do you study nonfiction books looking for patterns? So when I was working on my first nonfiction book, I was studying Malcolm Gladwell. Curtis, you are being seen, don't worry. I was studying Malcolm Gladwell, okay? I thought if I could just write a little bit more like Malcolm Gladwell, that would go really well because I think he's such a great writer. So I went to study Malcolm Gladwell, and I noticed that one of the things that he does really well is he tells these amazing stories, okay? They're so immersive, you just get hooked into them, okay? And so I went to study them, and I found out, my initial idea was that these stories must be really long because, you feel so immersed in them. When I actually studied them, I found out that they were at max only 1 or 2 pages long. They weren't very long, okay? I thought they were long. They were actually not very long. What I realized is that, like most nonfiction writers, Malcolm Gladwell tells stories as anecdotes, okay? Anecdotes are a very important part of writing nonfiction. So what is an anecdote? An anecdote is a story where the point of the story is not the story itself. It's to make some other kind of point. Okay, so case studies are related to anecdotes. It's a way to prove a point using stories, and they're so important to nonfiction writers, but you also have to be careful about not getting carried away with them. So we're going to talk more about how to use this kind of story in your nonfiction writing in a second. But what I learned from this was that if you're writing fiction, you should set your book in 2 worlds. And if you're writing nonfiction, you should tell stories as anecdotes. But even more than that, I learned how to study books looking for patterns. To put it another way, aspiring writers, they write about whatever they want. They get an idea, they're so excited about it, and they just start writing. But published authors, they know what makes a good book. And they learn that through studying other good books, looking for patterns. All right? All right. Our third secret that published authors know that aspiring writers don't is that published authors know how to steal structure. So let me know in the chat, how many of you have heard of the quote, good artists borrow, great artists steal? Have you heard of that quote, good artists borrow, great artists steal? A bunch of people said, yep. Sometimes it's attributed to Picasso, sometimes to Steve Jobs. Yep, someone said Picasso. It's actually not by any of those. It was actually adapted from something the English poet T.S. Eliot said, and Saul, you even mentioned T.S. Eliot, but he didn't even say that. He said, immature poets imitate, mature poets steal. Immature poets imitate, mature poets steal. What mature writers do is they take an idea out of culture or history or life, they take the structure of it, and then they transform it into something new. So let me give you an example of what this actually looks like. Because the person who did this the best was William Shakespeare. All right, who knows what this picture comes from? Might be easy for a bunch of you. Let me know in the chat if you know. Boyan, it is not offensive, I promise you. I disagree that it promotes a simple idea. We'll talk more about what we're talking about in a second. All right, Colleen, yep. Rulin, Christine, Param, yep, you guys are very fast. Yep, this is Romeo and Juliet. Actually, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet with Claire Danes and Leo DiCaprio, right? What you might not know about Shakespeare and this story is that he totally ripped this story off, okay? So about 30 years before Romeo and Juliet was first performed, there was this Englishman named Arthur Brooke, and he published a book called The Tragical History of Romeo and Juliet. And I'm going to post that in the chat so that you can see the title. It looks kind of familiar, right? I also just love how it's spelled. I love the extra letters on the ends of words. I think I should start doing that, just adding E's to something. It's so great. Yep. Tristan is definitely related to it as well. Why not? Exactly. I love it. All right. What you probably don't know about Arthur Brooke, though, and the tragical history of Romeo and Juliet, is that he completely stole that story from an Italian author. So Romeo and Juliet was really a theft of a theft. And that's because great writers steal, okay? Now, to be clear, Boyan and others, we're not talking about plagiarism here. Okay, we are not talking about plagiarism. If you look at Shakespeare's play and the tragical history of Romeo and Juliet, they're completely different. What Shakespeare was the best at was taking the structure of a story and transforming it into something new. So how do you do this? How do you actually steal structure? Let's start with nonfiction. All right, so for the nonfiction writers, how do you steal structure? As you study books, this really starts with studying, right? As you study books, you start to see patterns, okay? So let's start with nonfiction. I'm going to give you a really quick breakdown of a structure that you'll see in nonfiction books all the time, all right? So this is 4 steps to a nonfiction book chapter. This is one structure that you'll see very frequently, all right? The first step is to start with a story, with an anecdote that really focuses on the problem that you're focusing on in that chapter. And then you're going to analyze that problem, all right? After you tell the first half of a story, you really just want to tell the first half, just up until that person in the story gets stuck. You want to get them to a point where they're really stuck with this problem, okay? They have no idea what to do next, okay? And then you have the analysis, where you're analyzing the problem, you're showing the context of that problem. This might be where you share statistics, okay, demographics, get into some studies, and then you have the principle or the solution, where you show your solution to solving that problem. That might be a universal principle, like for Malcolm Gladwell, the 10,000 hour rule, or a 5-step solution to people solving that problem, okay? And then finally, you come back to your story, your anecdote, and you demonstrate that solution with your character. All right, so that's a really simple structure that works all the time. I would encourage you, go look at 20 nonfiction books if you're writing nonfiction, or maybe just 5, right? And look for that story, that structure, and see if you can find it. And if you can't find it, look for other structures and see how they work. Okay? All right, so what about fiction? If you're writing fiction, the first step to stealing structure is that you have to learn the dramatic structure. Okay? So I'm going to give you a mini story structure lesson here. Jehan, that is a great question. Let's put it in the Q&A box so we can answer it at the end. Okay? So I'm going to give you a mini story structure lesson. It's going to take a minute. So if you want to take notes, that's great. All right? But we'll also have some resources afterward. So there are actually 6 elements to dramatic structure, and you can be looking for these elements in the stories that you're studying. Okay? The first element is the exposition. This is where you're setting up the story, you're setting up the characters, you're introducing the world of the story to your readers, and you're setting up all the things that are eventually going to go wrong. Okay? So that's the exposition. Then you have the inciting incident. There's some kind of problem, some kind of complication is introduced, or some kind of thing happens that really starts the action of the story. The story starts moving, either in a good place for the character or a bad place for the character. Okay? And then you have the rising action, or progressive complications. This is where things are getting more and more complicated. They're either getting worse, maybe they're getting better for the character, but they're definitely getting more complicated. And that's all meant to lead the character to a crisis, a dilemma, a place where they're stuck, where they don't know which way to go. Okay? And they have to make a really impossible choice, something very difficult in terms of whether it's a good way or a bad way. You guys are asking such great questions in the chat. Michael, put it in the Q&A box. We'll answer it at the end, okay? And then finally, second to last, you have the climax. What happens is they make the choice in the dilemma, and that drives you directly to the climax. The climax is the big moment in the story where you have the most amount of action. You find out whether this is going to be a tragedy or a happy ending. And then finally you have the denouement, or the resolution. Okay, some kind of resolution. In a story, this is usually just one scene. Okay, and you kind of wrap everything up and you show what the world looks like now that you've gone through all that drama. All right? And you can use those for your story. You can also use those for your scenes. Okay, because all of those elements occur both in your story as a whole and in your individual scenes. All right, so I know I went through that really fast. So if you want to get more information on each of those plot elements, there's a link to the first one, and they're all linked from there, therightpractice.com/exposition. Okay, I'll type that there in the chat. And we also have a new book that came out this year at The Right Practice. It's called The Right Structure, and it has all of these answers and more, including some of the answers to your question in the Q&A box. So if I don't get a chance to answer those questions, check out this book. I think it will be so helpful for you. It's $5.99 right now on Amazon, and it's a really great book, and will help you write better stories. Okay? So how do you do this? How do you actually steal structure? One of the best ways to do it is to take your idea, okay, and then find some books that are similar to the one that you're trying to write. Maybe 3 or 4 books, maybe 5 at max, okay? But find some books that are similar to the ones you're trying to write, then study those books. Look at, if you're writing nonfiction, look at how they use anecdotes, how they use analysis, how they share their principles, okay? Study that book. Figure out how it works. If you're writing fiction, look for those 6 elements. Find the structure in that book, and then go and outline your book. Take what you learned from that structure and apply it to your book. Okay? That's a great, simple way to steal structure. All right? The point of all of this, though, is that aspiring writers, they come up with their own ideas. They get really excited about an idea and they just start writing. Published authors, though, they study books, they steal structure, they learn how to take ideas out of culture and life and history and transform them into something new. And again, we're not talking about plagiarism here, we're not talking about copying, we're talking about transforming ideas into something new. All right? All right, our fourth secret that published authors know is that published authors have interesting ideas. Published authors have interesting ideas. And obviously this is a subjective thing. There's no perfect formula for what's interesting or not. So then how do you know if your ideas are interesting? And the answer is that you test them. You test them. You ask people. And if they say, I love that idea, I would totally read that book, then you know you're on to something. And if they say, I don't know if that really sounds like me, then maybe you need to go back to the drawing board. And maybe you're wondering, who could I possibly ask? And the answer is, you ask everyone you know. You share your story and your idea with everyone you know. You ask your friends and your family, your writing group, random strangers at your local coffee shop, and you say, hey, I have this idea. You share your premise, and then you ask, what do you think of this idea? Would you read a book like this? And the reality is that you can do this today. You can share your book idea today and get feedback on it and make your book idea better. Now, when I ask people to share their story ideas, I usually hear one of two different fears that people have about doing this. Maybe you're thinking this right now. The first fear that people have is, what if people steal my idea? What if someone takes my idea and they write a book with it and they become this famous best-selling author and I'm left out? And honestly, this isn't something you should be worried about. And here's why. Because if two people started with the same idea, what would happen is that they would write completely different books. We see this happen all the time in our writing contests. We host a lot of writing contests at the Write Practice, and everyone starts with the same idea, with a prompt that we assign. We never once had two stories that were exactly the same or even remotely the same. You can start with the same idea and have two completely different truths, okay? But here's a hard truth, and this is hard to say, especially if you're like me and you're an idea person. But here's the thing. Your ideas are not the best part of your writing. I'm going to say that again. Your ideas are not the best part of your writing. Your writing is the best part of your writing. So stop worrying about people stealing your ideas. Worry about your ideas not getting written in the first place. Worry about not getting feedback on your idea so that you can make your idea better. Okay? And the second thing I hear from people is this. What if people hate my idea? And actually, I don't hear this very often. I just know that people are thinking this, right? What if I share my idea and people don't like it? And if that happens to you, first of all, I just want to say, I'm sorry. I get it. I've been there. And also, it might be a good thing. Okay? It might be a good thing if you find out now, before you start writing your book, rather than after you finish. Because writing a book can take a really long time. It can take hundreds, even thousands of hours. And wouldn't it be great to know if your idea isn't working, if it needs some extra work, before you started writing rather than after, okay? So that you can make it better, right? So whatever you do, make sure you're sharing your ideas. I think everyone needs feedback. I need feedback. You need feedback. Colleen needs feedback. Michael needs feedback. Jehan needs feedback. Tom needs feedback. We all need feedback, right? So you need to share your writing. You need to share your ideas with other people so you can get that feedback and make your idea better and then get to work and start writing it. So go get feedback, okay? All right, I love this quote from Robert McKee. He said this: when talented people write badly, it's generally for one of two reasons. Either they're blinded by an idea, they feel compelled to prove, or they're driven by an emotion they must express. When talented people write well, it's generally for this reason. They're moved by a desire to touch the audience. And this is why testing is so helpful, because it forces you to stop thinking about how you feel about your idea and starts you thinking about how your readers will feel about it. I think as writers, we too often idealize how we think the writing process should feel, how excited we should be about our ideas. But here's the thing. Your idea is not about you. This is really important, guys, okay? Your idea is not about you. Actually, your writing is not about you. It's about your readers. It's about creating a connection with your readers. When talented people write well, they're moved by a desire to touch the audience. And that's what you need to do. Aspiring writers, they just write for themselves. They write to create this feeling within them that makes them feel excited and, proud of themselves and feel artsy or whatever. But published authors, they write for others. They write to create a connection with others. Okay? All right, last one. Our fifth secret that published authors know that aspiring writers don't is that published authors know how to execute. Published authors know how to execute. I love this quote from George R. R. Martin. I wish he followed his advice a little bit more. He said, "Ideas are useless. Execution is everything." And I know this training is called Better Book Ideas. And I know it's funny because now I'm telling you your ideas are worthless. But it's true. Because your idea isn't going to write your book for you. Okay? You need to actually write your book. No one wants to read your idea. They want to read your book. Execution is everything, not your idea. And I have a question for you, and let me know in the chat. Have you ever had a great book idea and tried to write it, but then never finished it? Let me know in the chat if this has ever happened to you. That you've had a great book idea, tried to write it, then never finished it. And that's my story. So I had a great book idea. I had lots of great book ideas for a decade's worth of ideas. And I tried to write them, and I failed again and again and again. And what happened is that first book I told you about that I wrote 10 years ago that made me an author, it wasn't my idea. It was actually someone else's idea. And it was an idea I really believed in, an idea I wanted to become a book, but it wasn't my idea. Instead of learning to write the great American novel that I had as my idea, what I learned was how to execute. And there were so many times when I was writing that first book, when I got other new book ideas that I wanted to focus on instead. There were so many times when I hated that book, when I thought it was the worst book ever written, and I thought never would anyone ever want to read it, when I thought I would never finish, when I thought I wanted to quit writing and quit being a writer in general. But I didn't quit. I finished. I became an author. And what I learned that year wasn't how to come up with great book ideas. What I learned that year was how to execute. And learning that made all the difference. I would never have learned to finish any other book, including my memoir, including my novel, if I hadn't learned how to execute first. And I know I'm not alone. You see a lot of yeses in the chat. Lots of times Serena said all the time. Judy said yes. Travis Gurr, yes. Patricia, yes. Oodles of times Ruti said. Colleen, yes. Yes, it has. Alika, I, yes. Guilty as charged, yes, many times. Quite a few times, Partharana. Ita, yes. Almost every time, Carmen said. Oh, lots of times, Nana. Yeah, so many yeses. Ella, too many times. Many, many times I'm in one right now. Yeah. All the time, Kimberly. Yes, I also wrote a book that I hate, but I know if I rewrote it, I'd like it better. It's great, Judith. I mean, congrats. I mean, you wrote a book. That's awesome. Let's talk about that more in the chat or in the Q&A. I finished it, but I'm not sure whether my story is good. Yes, I wrote a little and stopped, Angela. Yes, I'm procrastinating now. Yeah. So a lot of us have been there. So here's my question for you. And you've already done this a little bit, but I want you to do it again, one last time. Okay? Are you going to commit to this? Are you going to commit to the execution? And here's the thing, I don't want you to commit to an idea, and I especially don't want you to commit to feeling good about the writing process. Okay? Too many writers think that you need to be feeling good about the writing process to execute, and that's just not true. Okay? I don't want you to commit to a feeling, because feelings change. You're going to feel different about your book in the middle of it than you are when you finish. I don't want you to commit to a feeling. I want you to commit to executing. I want you to commit to finishing no matter what. No matter what happens, you are going to finish. Can we commit to that? All right? Let me know in the chat if you're ready to commit. I'm seeing a lot of people who are committing to this. Sadia, Elijah, Jehan, Tom, Zanda, Kaniska, Colleen is in, Bola, yes, lots of yeses. The writing process is worthwhile agony. Andrew, no matter what, Stacy, yes, Antonio, Carissa, Ruti, I'll commit to getting started on chapter 1. Love it. Sure as hell, Elijah said. Yeehaw, I said. Next chapter, yes, I am committed, Barbara said. Hell yes, said Michael. I'm committed. Yes, trying to commit. Of course, I am ready to have fun, but there are some less fun parts. Yes, that's absolutely true. I'm committed, and my family feels I should be committed. I love that. So good to have that kind of accountability. It's worth it, Judy said. Absolutely. Love it, John. All right, so right now there are actually 98 people on this training, okay, which is awesome. A year from now, I want to hear from 98 people, okay, that you finished your book, that you took your idea, that you executed, and that you finished your book. Can you commit to that? Okay? Now I want you to, if you have to set a calendar reminder, maybe for January 1st, 2023, or December 31st, 2022, whatever, to let me know that you finished your book. I would love to hear from you and celebrate you that you executed and that you finished your book. Can we commit to that? Charles said, sure thing, in my calendar already for October 30th. I love it. Thanks. Very cool. All right. So what's the next step? How do you actually do that? How do you take your idea and turn it into a finished book? And the answer is you need to do what Jamie Beggs did. So Jamie had an idea for a book. In fact, she had way too many ideas. She was an aspiring writer, but the problem was that she didn't know the process. She didn't know how to write a book and how to become an author, so she invested in herself. She signed up for one of our writing programs, and it worked. She finished her book. Since then, it's had over 1.2 million page reads. You can see it there on Amazon. That's just in 2020, which is crazy. It wasn't easy. It was a challenge, but it was also the good kind of challenge. She did it. She turned her idea into a published book. And as we've helped hundreds and thousands of authors write and publish their books, we've found there's really a process. We call it the right practice process. And it all starts with an idea. With an idea like the one that most of you have, 90% of you have. But like we talked about, an idea alone isn't enough. You also have to develop that idea. And that's where a book plan comes in handy. Thinking through the title of your book, the outline of your book, your premise, and also how your writing process is going to look, how the editing process is going to look, and even the publishing process, and creating a full plan for your entire writing process. And then you have to do the hard work that I saw my dad do, that I learned from him, of dragging yourself to your computer and writing as much as you can, as long as you can, until you crash at the end of the day. If you do that long enough, if you drag yourself to your keyboard and write for long enough, you will finish a book. You will have a finished book by the end of it. But one thing that anyone who has ever finished a first draft knows is that they are always terrible. Like a few people said, you always hate your first draft, and that's normal, okay? Because the next step is you have to go back through the process again, just to work on a second draft. You see the little guys sticking their hand up through the crumpled up papers, okay? And then after that, you have to get some feedback. Usually that looks like feedback from a professional editor, also a writing community, from peers who can give you feedback and make your book idea better. And if you do that long enough, if you go through this process, by the end, you will have a finished book. But one thing that happens with writers when they finish a book is they start to get some delusions of grandeur. They think about all the money that their book is going to make, all of the applause that it's going to get, all of the awards it's going to receive. And the reality is, for debut authors, that's not usually how it works, okay? So that's where you need to start building some relationships with an audience. Sometimes that looks like having a website, starting to reach out on social media, starting to build a platform. But that's so that when you launch your book, you have a community, an audience ready and excited for your book so they can go and share it with the world. All right? And the question is 2022 going to be the year? I saw a few people who are going to finish their books by the end of 2021. That's a bold move. I love it. But 2022, could 2022 be the year where you finally do this? So we have a program at The Right Practice. It's called 1 Year to Publish, where we're taking a small group of just 12 writers, and we're going to walk them through this process of starting with a book plan and finishing their first draft, teaching them the publishing process so they know how to publish, and then writing a second draft and getting feedback from an editor on our team, as well as a community of other writers, and then finally finishing their final draft and getting ready to publish. We call it 1 Year to Publish. I have a video that I'm going to share with you of some people who have been through the program and are talking about it. And let me turn on the sound for this. Let me know in the chat if you can hear this.
Just talk about what this time has meant for you over the last year and what you've gotten out of it.
Honestly, when everything started in March, I thought this was going to be the worst year for me creatively. And thanks to all of you, thanks to this group here, it actually turned out to be my best. I don't think I could have gotten anywhere near the progress I made and what I managed to get done this year without you guys. Having people who are like-minded, who are pushing each other to achieve is just being amazing. And you know, having a group like this, it's different from the people that you're near regularly. You can have close friends and close family who you love dearly, who are very close to you, but it's not the same as having people who share the same passion as you, who push you to go for that passion in the way that you need beyond. So it's just been amazing. This group really made this year what was potentially a disaster on a personal level, a truly good one.
Yeah, I just have to say when I started last year, I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. I've never written a novel before, so this program has really helped me figure out the best path forward, and then also being able to talk with other writers, because, I mean, where I'm at, where I work, I don't know any other writers, and so this group has really helped keep me going and you know, has been very supportive, and, you know, now I feel like I have a path forward.
The one thing I can say is you guys really kept my feet to the fire, because I'm sure that if I hadn't been in this group, when things went really cattywampus, I would have just been like, well, I can't do this. But I was like, no, I have to do this. It kept me going.
I think more than anything else, I kind of got out of this feeling like a writer, because I've been working on my book for about a year by myself, and it just didn't really take off until I started with the group. But then the guest speakers and the camaraderie of the group and the comments and feedback, I think that made a huge difference. And I'm not sure that I would have gotten there by myself.
I usually get to about 7 chapters of a book, and then I put it down and move on to the next thing, which is why I've never freaking finished a book. All the steps that it takes just to get to the point of publishing, it's like so intimidating. And being able to kind of see each other go through that, it's so helpful. And then going through the 100-day, both the first draft and then the second draft, that's just huge. It's been a good year.
Very good year.
It's been a really good year. It's been moments where I hated what I was doing and I loved what I was doing, and a lot of screaming and joy and all kinds of emotions that got wrapped up into this last year. I'm really glad I did it.
I would say that in a world where it seems like anyone can be a writer, I think we as a group are distinguished because we've been a part of the program. The guidance has been immeasurable. It really has been wonderful to be a part of it. I mean, this past year I've accomplished more with my writing than I have, like, basically the rest of the time I've been writing, so it's been really good.
So that's our commitment to you. If you sign up for 1 year to publish, you will learn to write a book and get published in 1 year. So here are a couple things about the program that are cool. You'll experience our virtual writing retreat, the Write Practice Virtual Writing Retreat, where we get together over a weekend and plan out our books. We create our book plans. We work through our premises. We get feedback on it. We create an outline. We learn story structure together. And we really get prepared to start writing our books. Virtual retreat doesn't sound very fun. It's actually a really amazing time to connect with each other and start working on our books. And then you'll get access to to the first round of 100-Day Book to write your first draft, okay? So how many of you have participated in 100-Day Book or heard of it? Let me know in the chat if you've been part of 100-Day Book. 100-Day Book is our 100-day writing program. A couple of people who are have been in it, and someone's in it now. That's really cool. So in 100 days, you get daily lessons to make your writing better and to encourage you. You'll get a mentor to hold you accountable to your deadlines that we'll set for you, okay? So that by the end of that 100 days, you have a finished draft, okay? So you get that. Then after your first draft, you get professional editing. This is so important. We all need feedback. It's so great to have feedback from a professional editor. They will read your book. They'll give you feedback on how to make your book better. And then you'll go into your next round of 100-Day Book to work on your final draft, to get your book ready for publishing. You'll also have access to our course, Foundations of Publishing, where you'll learn how to build your author platform, where you'll learn the publishing process, what that actually looks like, how to actually publish your book, whether you're going traditional publishing or self-publishing. You'll learn how to do that. One of the cool things that we do in 100-Day Book is that we have an incentive, a $100 incentive for everyone who finishes their book without missing deadlines, okay? So if you finish your book in 100 days, you'll have 2 of those, you'll get $100 back twice, potentially, which is a pretty cool thing. You'll have our monthly mastermind calls. This is one of the best parts of the program. So you'll get with your small group of writers. You'll check in with each other, see how you're doing, what you're struggling with over the year, what you're doing well with, okay? You'll hear from, you'll get feedback on your writing, live on those, and you'll hear from expert guests. These are published authors, best-selling authors, agents, and editors who can give you a sense of what you need to be focusing on in both that time of the 100-day or of the 1 year, and also in your author career in general. You also have weekly mingles. I think we learn from community. That's really how we grow, right? And being close to other writers, getting to know them, seeing how they're doing, watching them go through the same process you are, you just learn so much through that process. And then when you publish your book, we will promote it, okay? Once you publish your book, once you hit publish, we'll promote it to our community of readers and authors, and that will be so good for you. So that's 100-Day Book. This program is application only, okay? We have a limited number of spots, and they will fill up. Okay, we've already had 4 or 5 people who have signed up, including someone I think is here right now, which is so great. So this is application only. These spots will fill up. If this is something that you're interested in doing, please sign up now because they will go quickly. If you want to sign up, you can get the application there, therightpractice.com/1YTP, and I will post the link in the chat. I can learn how to spell. Here we go. So you can find the application there. We're going through applications right now. We're creating these groups. If this is something that you want to do, definitely check it out, apply, and we'll talk to you. All right? We're going to go into our time of Q&A in just a second, but I want to just take a quick step back for a second. There was a great science fiction writer named Robert Heinlein who had 5 rules for writing. And I think rule number 2 speaks directly to what we're talking about today. He said you must finish what you write. But what if you're not finishing what you write? What if you're like how I was a decade ago? If you're not finishing what you write, I think it's probably for one of the following 3 reasons. And the first reason is that you don't have an idea. You don't have an idea, but I know for 90% of you, this isn't your problem. You do have an idea. You might not be confident about it, but like we talked about, the idea is less important than the execution. And the second reason that you might not be finishing is because you're not serious about writing. But I'm assuming that just by showing up to this training and staying for an hour and 13 minutes, it shows that you are serious about writing. You do want to finish your book. You just don't know how to do it. And the final reason, and I think this is true for every struggling writer I talk to, it's that you don't have a team. And a team can look like a lot of things. It can look like an editor giving you a deadline. It can look like a group of other writers holding you accountable. It can look like a program like this, like 1 year to publish. But most people, they think they can do this alone. They think they can write their books without support or encouragement or accountability. And that's why most people fail to finish their writing. If you do have an idea, if you are serious, but you don't have a team, we would love to step into your corner to encourage you, to support you, and just kind of watch as you finally finish your book in 100-day book or in 1 year to publish. All right? So that's the program. Like I said, applications are open now. We would love to have you. You can check them out, therightpractice.com/1YTP. Okay? All right, we're going to go into our time of Q&A now. If you have a question, put it in the Q&A box. Okay? I'm seeing a lot of questions there already, and I saw some in the chat as well. So just put your question there again, if you would, especially if I haven't answered it yet. All right. So we'll do about 15 or so minutes of Q&A, and then I'll do my free prize. So if you're able to stick around still a little bit longer to get that free prize, we'll do that as well. All right. Great. Thank you so much, Shelley. All right. So I saw one question. 2 drafts to finish novel. I think it was Michael, you asked 2 drafts, a novel and 2 drafts. So in 1 year to publish, you'll have 2 rounds of 100-day book, but in between them, kind of during the summer, really, you will have a chance to work on your book on your own, okay? And to work on your next book. We don't quite have time to do 3 rounds of 100-day book, and you also want to be focusing on publishing as well in the middle of that. But you'll have 2 rounds of 100-day book to work through your novel, and then you'll have some time on your own to work through a draft. All right? All right, someone asked here, when is the deadline to sign up to apply for 1 year to publish? So there's no formal deadline, but like I said, these applications are very limited. These slots are very limited. We're making groups right now. So make sure to, if this is something you want to do, make sure to sign up now. Okay? Another person asked, when does it start? 1 year to publish starts in January 2022. Okay? The 100 days, we'll have some time to prep. The retreat is in February, early February. And then we'll have 100 days starts on February 14th is the beginning of the 100 days, the first round. So there you go. All right, so many questions. Oh my gosh, a lot. This is awesome. Normally I have Sarah or Abby or Alice to help me with this, so it's a little bit tricky. Kaniska asks, is there a fee charged for this course? So yeah, there is a fee, and you know, part of that goes to paying for a 100-day book, which is normally $590. Some of that goes to paying the editors who will be reading your book. Normally that's about $1,200. So it is an investment. When you're to publish, the cost is $3,490 if you pay in full. And then if you want to do a payment plan, it's $349 per month for 12 months. So it is an investment, right? And you get a lot of really great value. Normally, editing is much more expensive, and the masterminds that you get, there's a ton of value packed into it. And it's a really amazing experience to work on your writing for a year and have that kind of focus and actually finish a book by the end of it and get ready for publishing. All right? Okay, here is a question from I. Is it wise to work on more than one book at a time, short versus long, fact versus fiction? So every time that I see someone working on multiple books at once, they fail, okay? It's really hard to work on 2 books at once. It's almost always better to just stay focused and finish the book that you're working on and get it done and then move on to something else. That being said, if you're working on a nonfiction book and a fiction book, and maybe it's part of your day job, you can pull that off. You know, I've seen people do it where they're working on a nonfiction book and then a novel, but even then, people burn out. You know, they get stalled. It gets really hard. So it's really, really important to just stay focused on the one that you're finishing, because that's like the #1 way that I see people failing to finish their books. Serena asks, will there be more of these Zoom presentations? I thought it was very valuable and helpful. This is the last one for this series. The last one we're probably doing in 2021, but we'll have more in the future. So just stay tuned in on your email, and we'll let you know when our next one is coming up. Thanks, Serena. Does age matter when becoming a published author? And how would you get a book published if you're under 18? Great question, Serena. Age does not matter. There are a lot of authors who are younger and wrote their first books as younger. Now, I think practice matters, right? It's hard to write a book, and it's hard to write a book the first time. Usually, you have to write multiple books before you get traditionally published. So I would encourage you to keep practicing, right? And you know, now is the time for you to practice. I think that's so fun. All right, let me post a link. We have some advice for young writers. If you're under 18, if you're a young writer, or if you're young at heart, here's a great article from one of our contributors who is giving advice that she wished she had gotten as a young writer. So definitely check that out, Serena and others, Jessica, who can use that. All right. Jessica also asks, is this program available to kids? Definitely with parental approval. 100-day book, we've had younger writers. We had one, oh shoot. That one's not working. Let me find it for you, I'm sorry. This is where it's easier when Sarah's here, so she can give it to me. Now you'll have to wait and watch me type. Oh, I was so close. It's tips for young writers. There you go. Yeah, hopefully you find that helpful. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, we've had writers as young as 10 take 100-day book with parent, which is amazing. When you're to publish is a little bit more involved. I think it's best to be a little bit older before taking that. But talk to your parent, and obviously all of this stuff comes with parental approval if you're under 18. Okay? All right, thanks. what about overcoming the fear of which idea to pursue? Yeah, I think that's an interesting question, because when you have a lot of ideas, it's really hard to choose which one to write. And what I would say to that is just choose one. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, the final book that you ever write. Okay? Choose one after, testing it, of course, after studying books. But choose one and then write it. One of the things about this is that we get too perfectionistic. We get too precious about our ideas and about our books and about the writing process. And a lot of this is just practice. We believe in practice, at the right practice, believe it or not. It's really important to us. And your first book is going to be practice. And by the way, your next book is going to be practice, and your next book. But every time you finish a book, every time you share it with the world, you're going to become a better writer, and your next book is going to be better. So choose one of those ideas and write it, and then move on to the next one. It doesn't have to be perfect. You've got time to finish multiple books in your life. Start with one and do that one, and then you can continue on to the next one. Okay? Thanks, Sherry. All right. You've been saying 1YTP, but it's 1Y2P. Yeah, it's 1Y. The link to sign up is therightpractice.com/1Y2P. But 1 year to publish, okay, is the name of the course. Thanks, Asha. All right, how can I blend fictional and non-fictional ideas? That's an interesting question, Patricia. I don't know. I would encourage you to study other books that are doing that and learn from them and see how they do it. I mean, I think you see this all the time in historical fiction, right? So I think Wolf Hall is a famous example. There's a lot of great historical fiction that you can check out and see how they blend kind of these real events that are in real life and these fictional events, these fictional characters. And that's really fun. It's a great way to do it. Yeah, Tolstoy, Charles Dickens, they did this too. I talked about Tale of Two Cities, which of course does that as well. Even Les Miserables, right? Victor Hugo was a big fan of doing that. So yeah, look for some historical fiction. Study those books and figure out how they're doing it, and then apply that to your own writing. I think studying is something we can all do, and it's so helpful. All right? All right, there's so many great questions. I'm going to do my best to answer as many as I can. How do you meet your characters and get them to speak to you? Ruti asks. I think with this kind of stuff, the best thing you can do is just start writing. You can do like characterization exercises, but I think those are so much less helpful than just getting into your story and start writing it and seeing how it goes, right? Seeing what they do. The most important thing you can do is get your characters into dilemmas, okay? Which I talked about. It's one of those elements of plot, the dramatic elements, and you can read more about it in the right structure. But no one really knows your true character, their true character, until they get into a really tough situation, right? Until they're faced with a dilemma, and they have to choose. Do I do this thing that's, hard, but kind of selfish, or do I do this other thing that's hard but kind of easy, right? Or hard but kind of self-sacrificial, right? So you have to put your characters into dilemmas, and then you get to learn about them and figure out what they do, okay? So read the right structure. I think it will be really helpful for you. All right, Colleen asks, when do you put in the 18-sentence outline in those spots that don't hold the core plot or subplot's main 6 elements? Oh, we're getting into some great right structure questions that don't hold the core plots. I'm not fully understanding your question, Colleen. Oh, what do you put in the 18-sentence outline? In the spots that don't hold the core plot or the subplot's main 6 elements, when it's just kind of a minor plot point, you might leave them blank on your first draft. you might have a better sense of what they are in your second draft. But you'll know what those things are, you know. It's not going to be the core plot, but it could be something that moves the plot toward the core plot, right? It's set up, right? So you'll know. And if you don't know, that's okay for your first draft. You just keep writing and you discover it, right? All right. This is a big question from Curtis. What is involved in self-publishing? That's a very big question. I wish I could answer it fully in the time that we have. We have a great resource on the Write Practice that has some really important tools for writing, including some guides on how to self-publish and the self-publishing tools that are out there in the world. So check that out, thewritepractice.com/tools, and it's going to give you both the guide and the tools, like KDP, Vellum is popular, Publisher Rocket, things like that, that's going to help you self-publish your books. So check that out. There's a lot of great resources there. All right. Jessica asks, for fiction writers, is it important how many characters you have? Yeah, it is important. That's a good question. So one of the things I would say is, again, you want to keep things simple, right? You don't want to make the mistake that George R.R. Martin made and have like 150 characters. It's just too hard, right? And 8 viewpoint characters. It's too hard. He's still not done, and he was a really, really good writer. It still is a really good writer. He had 30 years of experience before he started Game of Thrones, right? But he's struggling, and that's because it's way too complicated. Keep your ideas really simple. The fewer characters you have, the better, okay? And that sometimes looks like cutting characters if they're not pulling their weight in the story, okay? I give to my editing clients, I give them the advice all the time. Cut this character, cut that character. Simplify your cast. It will make your story so much easier to tell. Now, there are times when having a big cast can be helpful, but it just makes it more complicated. And for your first story, simple is better. So try to be simple. Try to have the fewest characters possible that your story needs. Okay? All right. All right, Angela. How do you zero in on one of the many ideas and decide which one is worth developing? I would just ask people, I would test them with people, and see if it has those two worlds we talked about in your story. See if it has the two worlds so that you can see, if it's good. And then just see which one you want to write the most right now. Again, this is not the book it's not the last book you'll ever write. This is practice. So choose the book that you can learn the most from. Choose the book that's the simplest, right? So you can get it done quicker and get into your other ideas, all right? And then go do it. Finish it, right? Nakshatra asks, do you think for a first book it's better to create an idea from scratch or retell an already existing story? It depends on what your idea is right now. What I would say is you probably have an idea already, right? And you probably, excuse me, there are probably other stories that are similar enough, that have similar structures that you can learn from, right? Because there's nothing, like we said, there's nothing new under the sun, okay? So look for those stories. I don't think you have to go invent a new retelling of Romeo and Juliet or whatever, unless that's something you want to do, which, that can be really fun. A lot of people, if you don't have an idea yet, by the way, one of the best things you can do is write fan fiction, or take an idea that you already like and transform it into something new. Take a story you like. But if you have an idea, you don't have to go abandon your idea and find, a new idea from a story. Just find a story that's similar to the one you're trying to tell and use that, okay? All right. I answered that one, Angela. All right. Michael asks, how do you finish off the story's denouement when you need the subplot revelation to fuel the climax? Okay, this is a good question. When you need the subplot revelation to fuel the climax. Michael, I think I might need just a little bit more context here. I sort of see what you're trying to say, what you're saying, but I'm missing it a little bit. So maybe you can say in the chat what you give me a little bit more context. I asked, is this going to be recorded? It's so interesting, and I'd like to be able to rewatch. It is not being recorded. This is live only, folks. I hope you found it helpful. It's great to be able to do these. For this one, it's just live. But check out the right structure if you want to go deeper on this stuff. I think that would be really helpful for you. And we'll be doing this training again someday, maybe next year. All right, thanks. Okay, Michael says there's a mystery element that reveals a lie that leads to a confrontation. It sounds like that's not the denouement to me. The denouement happens right at the end. Usually, we're getting deep into some structure things. Usually the denouement is the climax of the subplot. So think about, the kind of story that ends with the couple kissing at the end, right? And, the mystery is the subplot. That's okay. So you don't have to end the mystery with, or the denouement does not have to be the subplot, okay? It sounds like the subplot mystery story needs to happen right before the climax, right? And then you'll have a denouement in some other way. Just the character walking off into the sunset or something like that. All right? Cool. When is the best? Oh, you know what? It's 2:33 my time, so let's go ahead and do our giveaway because I know some people need to leave. And then I'll try to answer a few more questions. Does that sound good? Because I see that we still have a ton of questions. But if for those people who need to leave, I want to make sure you can get your giveaway. Okay? Sound good? So here's what we're going to do for our giveaway. One of the things that we found is that when people finish a book plan, they're much more likely to actually finish a book. In fact, we found that when people in 100-Day Book finish a book plan, they turn it in, they're actually 52% more likely to finish their book by the end of the 100 days. So having a book plan can actually help you take your idea and turn it into a finished book. So we want to give you a copy of our book plan. This is the process where you'll think through your idea, you'll think through the premise, okay? You'll think through your outline. You'll also just think through the writing process and editing process and even like publishing. Because when you think through all of it, you're actually much more likely to get there and feel prepared when you do get there. Okay? I posted the link to that in the chat so you can find it there. And you can download it, print it out if you want. By the way, this is a link, this worksheet comes from our book plan planner, our Write Plan Planner, which you can find online. I'll show you the link to it. It's a really good resource, kind of step-by-step walks you through the process of writing your book. And I will put a link to that in the chat. That's the right one. Let me make sure. Yep, perfect. All right, so make sure you go download that plan, that book plan worksheet there in the chat so you can get your free prize. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming. If you want to stick around, we're going to answer a few more questions, but if you need to leave, that's totally fine. I want to mention again, When Year to Publish is open right now. Applications are open. It's a really great experience. Everyone who's been a part of it has really loved it. And I'll put the link to the application there. Check it out, apply if it sounds something that would be helpful for you. All right, let's get into some more questions. All right, I says, when is it best to edit? Good question. Because the most important thing when you're writing the first draft especially is just to stay focused on the writing process, not to get stuck with editing. One of the best ways to never finish a book is to get halfway through and then realize you need to fix half of your book, first half that you wrote, and you go back and you start editing it. You can do that forever and you will never finish your book. Instead, you need to say, okay, writing is an iterative process. It's going to take me multiple drafts to do this. So I'm going to finish this draft, okay? And then I'm going to go back and work on another draft. and I'm going to make it better. But if you keep going back and editing from the beginning, you will get stuck. You will never finish because it will never be perfect and you'll never get to the end. Okay, get to the end, take what you learned in the writing process, and then apply it to the next draft. Okay? All right, how do you get names for characters? Oh, I am the worst at this. There's a little tool on Scrivener. I use Scrivener to write my books. There's a little tool, and it generates names for you. It'll generate like 100 names, and I just pick one of the 100 names. And sometimes I don't even finish that. I don't even use that name till the end. Like the novel that I'm working on right now, I just put in first letters for their names. So it was like J and M, I think. No, it was H. J and H for the names of the main characters through like multiple drafts. It's bad. So I am not the person to ask for that. But Scrivener's a great help with that character name generator. All right, Michael asks, can a dilemma be a mixture of good and bad? For example, good for the protagonist, but bad for other characters, or bad for the protagonist, but good for other characters. So I think the problem with this is that you're getting focused on different perspectives. We're always talking about how it looks for one character, right, from one point of view. So something that's good for the protagonist, but bad for other characters, is probably going to be, it's going to be between two goods, or it might be between two bad things, right? So yeah, all that to say, yes, that's fine, but for the protagonist, one's going to be good, or one's going to be bad, and one's going to be bad, right? All right. When is the best? Oh, I did that one. All right. What if you have multiple main characters, like Game of Thrones? What would the premise be for that? First of all, he's still not done with that book. So let that just be a warning, right? That anytime you add multiple point of view characters, your writing gets hard, all right? Writing a book with multiple protagonists is very, very challenging. So I would encourage you, especially for your first book, just focus on one protagonist. If you're writing a romance novel where you have to have two protagonists, you can have two. Most romance books have two point of view characters, and that's fine. You know, you can have multiple characters, multiple protagonists, but it's hard to pull off. Okay, if you were writing the premise for Game of Thrones, I would describe the world. Actually, Westeros is the character, if that makes sense, because the whole kingdom's getting thrown into turmoil by this craziness that's happening. So I would think about the kingdom as the character, if that makes sense. All right, I've written 22 chapters of a rough draft. I have done a few chapters of the second draft, but I'm still not sure it's a good idea. How can I tell if it is? Tom asked. All right, Tom, here's the deal. When you're working on a first draft, you are not allowed to judge your writing. And you're definitely not allowed to judge your idea, okay? So you do not get to say whether it's a good idea or not until you hit the end. Once you reach the end, then you can start thinking about whether it's a good idea or a bad idea or not, right? Okay, because you're just too close to it. You have no objectivity. You have zero objectivity, all right? So I don't even want you to think about it. I just want you to write, you know? What I tell my writing students is that don't worry about how good your writing is. Don't even think about it. That's not even something we measure when we're working on our first draft. All that you measure is how many words you wrote that day, because that's all you can really focus on. That's all that really matters. You just have to get to the end. And once you get to the end, then you can read it, and you can think about what's working in it and what's not, and probably there will be a lot that's not working, and there will be some things that are really good that are working. And then that comes the second draft, and that's a whole nother conversation. But for you right now, Tom, don't worry about it, okay? Don't even think about it. Just get your book done. Can you do that? All right. I hope you're here so that you could get that answer. All right. Paige says, Roald Dahl says his book Boy isn't an autobiography, but is these things which made an impression on him in his boyhood. I would quibble with him on that one. I call my MG book a true life novel, as it is also a series of memories, but perhaps enhanced for flow. I can't claim dialogue is verbatim. The story is mostly true, so memoir isn't far off, but not your standard type. I'm having a hard time finding comps. Okay, so here's the deal. Roald Dahl's book is true, right? As far as I remember, I read that book when I was in middle grade, so it's been a while. It's a memoir. It's kind of a series of stories. I would quibble that it's not an autobiography. By autobiography, usually that means like starting with childhood and kind of giving a long background. Like the Hamilton book is a biography, right? Memoir is focused on one experience, right? It's focused on one kind of the smallest thing in someone's life, right? It's focused on one story, almost like a novel, right? His is almost like a collection of essays, really, So, but I would call those like little memoir stories, okay? What you're talking about doing is in between that, and I'm not sure it's going to work for you, okay? Just to be honest. It's okay, by the way, if you're writing memoir, it's okay for the dialogue not to be verbatim because you don't know exactly what people said. And you can just say in your author note at the beginning that I did the best with my dialogue. You cannot enhance things, though, if it's memoir. You cannot. It has to be true. All right? That's really important. All right? You can tell it from a perspective that has story structure and makes the most out of something, but that's different than enhancing it. It's different from changing something. You have to tell the truth if you're writing memoir. All right? If you're writing a novel, then just write a novel. It doesn't have to be mostly true. But it sounds like you're kind of in this in-between place, and that's going to be tough. So choose what you want to do. All right, Kaniska, I have completely written my draft on my school life. Now I have no idea what to do with it. Okay, so here's, and this goes to Tom too, and anyone else who is ready to start editing their book. So here's how to edit a book, okay, how to work on a second draft, all right? So the first step is to take a break, all right? I want you to put your book down for at least 2 weeks and maybe 4. Not too much longer than that, because after a while you can never come back to it, right? You can just have a bad first draft and then never come back to it. But 2 to 4 weeks is a good amount. And this is just because you're too close to it. Like Tom, you're too close. And you need to get some perspective and be able to see things objectively again. And then I want you to read your book without editing. So read it from beginning to end. You are not allowed to edit here. The tendency is just start fixing typos and punctuation on page 1. You're not allowed to do that. Okay, you just have to read it. Because what you're looking for is how it works, how it flows, what the holes are in the story, what's good, what's bad, and you're starting to look for a structure. All right? The second draft is really about structure. Okay? It's to find the structure, to figure out what the structure is, to enhance the structure, to fill in any holes. This is where the right structure will be a huge help for you. Okay? By then, you need to have a good outline of your book. All right? Because the next step after you read it is to create another book plan. So you have the book plan worksheet. Create another book plan for your book. Okay? And, get the right structure and get the right planner if you want. And there's a section where you can outline each scene. And so you go scene by scene and you outline each scene and you get really into the details on what each scene is for. Okay? So that's how you work on the second draft. You really focus in on the structure. All right? And then the third draft is for polishing. You don't fix comma splices, you don't fix typos until the third draft, really. Because what's going to happen is you're going to delete whole chapters of your book in the second draft. And if you go and spend 4 hours fixing everything in your second draft, and then you have to go delete it, that's not going to feel very good. That's a huge waste of time, right? So focus on structure for your second draft, and then focus on polishing for your third. All right? Okay. Where's the protagonist's goal in the 6 steps of the scene, Michael asks. The protagonist's goal kind of comes out of the inciting incident. So let's say the inciting incident is a tornado that sweeps you away, right? From there, Dorothy has to choose what she wants to do. She wants to go home, right? It's obvious right at the beginning, and that's where her goal comes from. It comes out of the inciting incident. Okay. Every once in a while, you'll have a goal that exists in the exposition, and then they want to achieve that goal after the inciting incident. But that's really rare. It mostly, the inciting incident informs the goal. All right. I says, in movies, I noticed that they all seem to contain thousands of problem-solution pairs. Even the first scene is actually on a large level a problem-solution pair. And in the third scene, it's the same problem as in the first scene, but they just make it worse. Okay? No, I think that's totally true. So the problem is the inciting incident, right? The solution is the climax. Okay? But in between there is the rising action, which is called the progressive complications, and the dilemma. The dilemma is where the character's stuck and they have to solve something. They have to figure out the solution. They have to make a choice. Okay? And so that's the structure you'll find it all the time. Okay? The dilemma is where? The dilemma is the fourth element that we talked about. And usually in a scene, it's about halfway through. In a story, it's really close to the end. Okay? And again, this is where the right structure, we're getting into some stuff that we don't have time for to really kind of master. So check out the right structure. Okay? The decision is actually the climax. I know that sounds complicated, but read the right structure. Okay? Cool. And Della asks, what if we're both aspiring and published type of author? Like, I'm proud of my work and I feel a personal connection to the story, but I also like great feedback from the audience. Can this be possible? Absolutely. Yeah, we all need feedback. Stephen King still needs feedback, and he's 70 years old and he's published 50 books or something. We all need feedback, right? And it's important to get that kind of feedback from the audience as well. I think we thrive on that as writers. So yeah, that's totally possible. Sherry asks, how do you focus on one idea? You just finish it and you say no to everything else, okay? You don't get to choose to start a new book once you're working on your book. You have to finish your book, okay? Once you get started, you have to finish your book. That's the rule, okay? Otherwise, you'll never finish a book, because at some point you're going to hate your idea, just like Tom was talking about. You're going to think it's the worst idea ever. You'll be 22 chapters in, and you're not going to like it. And that's especially when you need to focus and get it done. Okay? This is just the deal, guys. This is the process. This happens to every single writer ever. Okay? Thanks, Riti. I appreciate it. We hate our ideas, And the people who finish books are the ones who keep writing, even when they hate their idea. Okay? They keep writing, they finish it, and then they move on to the next book. But you don't get to choose to work on a new book until you finish your current book. All right? All right, guys. I'm going to take 3 more questions, okay? I know we still have 12 questions, and I'm doing my best, but I think I have time for 3 more. All right? Esha asks, is the course suitable if you only have a setting, or do you need to have some characters ready? You have plenty of time if you're signing up for 1 year to publish to work on your idea. And honestly, you don't need to have the perfect idea right now to sign up for 1 year to publish. Thanks, Shelley. I appreciate you. You don't need to have the perfect idea. There's going to be plenty of time. And honestly, the idea doesn't really matter, Just even having some kind of beginning will be helpful. When I was working on my last novel, I had no idea 3 weeks before I started my round of 100-day book. And then I had an idea and a really bad outline a week before, right? You can figure this stuff out as you go. The writing process is the most important part, okay? The ideation part, it's not actually that important. All right, Lisa asks, is the second draft just editing the first draft, chapter by chapter? Any tips for not losing track of what you've written while you go along? Yeah, like I said, Lisa, the second draft is not just editing the first draft. It's not polishing, okay? You want to work on the structure of your book. So definitely don't just go in and start fixing typos and comma splices, okay? But to not lose track of what you've written while you go along, what you want to do is you want to read your draft, take notes on it, and then create a new book plan. Okay, and that's going to help give you like the 30,000 foot view on your book. All right. Okay, Paige says when it says based on a true story, that's my aim. Sorry I missed this earlier. Yeah, I think that's fine. You're still going to transform it into more of a novel. So I would really look at based on a true story stories, you know, and see how they're different from something like Blindsided, for example, which is a true story, you know. So see how they play with the structure of that event. All right, Serena asks, how do I make my plot more organized? I feel like I don't really have a planned plot for my book. It's kind of spontaneously written and has no clear story, kind of. So the answer is you read the right structure, really, because I have all of the things that you need. This is really a simple guide, guys. I'm not trying to make you outline every sentence. There's a lot of plotting books that are like, create a spreadsheet with, 50 rows and all of this stuff. And I think that can be helpful, especially in your second draft. But when you're working on your first draft, you need to do it more by gut feeling, And for the pantsers among us, having too much focus on plot can actually ruin your flow and creativity. So I just teach these really simple ideas, these really simple tools, and they work, especially for first draft writers. Okay, so check it out. And I hope that answered your question too, Parthana. Should I plan the storyline or just spontaneously write whatever comes to mind? I would do a short outline, okay? You don't have to plan everything, but like a 6-sentence outline with those things would be really, good enough. Tally said, I'm on day 60-ish of 100-Day Book. Can I switch? Maybe. Yeah, let's talk about it. Go ahead and apply, Tally, and say just in the notes that you're in day 60 of 100-Day Book and you'd like to move over to when you're published, and we'll talk about it. Okay? Sound good? Thanks for checking it out. All right. I'll answer one more question. And I'm trying to... Okay, this is a good one from John. When do you just stop and accept that the story you are creating simply isn't very good, and then move on to the next story? You stop when you finish the draft, okay? Because when you're in the middle of a draft, you have, like I said earlier, you have no objectivity. You are not the person that can judge whether it's good or not. And don't go share it with someone so you can have them tell you whether it's good or not. Please don't do that, because they'll give you some random feedback and then you'll be obsessed with that for a while, okay? No one gets to look at your draft until it's done. We never share our drafts when they're halfway through, okay? So go finish your draft and get it done, and then read it and figure out from there, right? Whether it's bad or not, and whether you're ready to work on the second idea, okay? All right. Thanks, Xanda. Appreciate you. Ruti, yeah, they will kill your idea. It's so true. They do. All right. Cool. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This was super fun, and I really appreciate you all. Again, Applications are open right now for when you're published. If this is something that you think would help you, I would really love to see your application in there. Spots are limited though, so please sign up quickly. Let me see if I can spell it out. All right, I'm going to end our time with just something of a creative blessing, and then we'll sign off. So I just say this: may you enjoy your writing. May it be fun and inspiring every day. And even when it isn't, may it bring your life a deep meaning. But most of all, may you finish your books. Thanks so much, everyone. Best of luck. We'll see you again soon. And I appreciate all the well wishes. I've had this cold for a week. Maybe it'll go away soon. Hoping it does. All right. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.